Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So what we're going to be chatting about today then is, how to deal with an injury and what you can do around that to make sure that you're still training effectively while also recovering at the same time. Now, the main reason that I wanted to make this video is because, well, yeah, I have that on my kneecap right now. So for those of you guys who follow me on social media, you'll have probably seen already, but for those who don't know, I'll basically skim over the story. So last week I managed to pick up an injury, which I'm absolutely fucking fuming about. I'm even more fuming with the fact that I didn't actually do it in the gym. I did this just by walking around at home, so that's what makes the story 10 times fucking worse in my case. But anyway, so what happened basically is I was walking around at home, I kind of planted my foot on the floor and I twisted my entire body the opposite direction. That led to like a really sharp pulling pain across the front of my kneecap, and I ended up collapsing to the floor in a little bit of agony for a few minutes. I managed to get back up after that and the pain went away, but it kind of came back anytime that I kind of like, rotated around slightly on my kneecap and stuff like that, and I was a little bit worried about it. Fortunately, it died down Monday night. Tuesday, it felt okay for most of the day, and then I think it was like late evening, something like that. Again, the pulling pain came back the minute that I actually like rotated my knee slightly. So I knew that there was a big problem in there somewhere, and unfortunately I couldn't get in to see a physio until Saturday, so a few days ago from when I'm recording this video, which meant throughout the entire week I was basically walking around with a kneecap and it felt weird as fuck. It really did feel weird. So I went to go see the physio, and he basically told me, after doing some like initial tests and stuff like that, that I had a slight tear in my meniscus. So I don't expect that there's going to be many physios watching this. So for those who don't know, the meniscus is like a little cartilage on the inside of your kneecap, and its basic responsibility is just to like hold your knee in place and hold all like the muscles and the ligaments around the knee joint in place so it's all stable. Now, what's happened basically is my bone has come into contact with my meniscus, and during that like initial twist and rotation, what's happened is the bone and cartilage have come together, grinded together, and that's what's created the tear in my meniscus. Because of that, that's now meant that my entire kneecap is basically unstable. And yeah, so with that, it means that my entire knee, like I said, already feels completely unstable, and on advice from the physio, I've basically been told that I can't do any squatting, deadlifting, or anything at all which actually loads my kneecap for a good 3 or 4 weeks initially. Now, it's a little bit more annoying in my position as well, because with the meniscus, it's not directly affected by blood flow. So it doesn't have like a direct blood flow to it, which means that it's a little bit uncertain how long it's going to take to repair. So, the physio that I saw reckons that it's only a very slight tear that I've got, which I'm quite thankful for. And he reckons it's only going to be 3 or 4 weeks before I can get back into, do my full leg days. But like he said as well, there's no telling how long it's going to take. It could take me another 3 or 4 months for it to fully repair and stuff like that. No idea what's going to happen. But yeah, so that's basically what's happened with my injury and stuff like that. And as I've already mentioned, I'm not allowed to do any kind of like heavy loading on my kneecap at all. So, no deadlifts, like no matter what version it is, no rack pulls, no squats, any kind whatsoever. And to be honest, I'm not even allowed to do a lot of upper body movements. So anything like my pendlay rows and wide grip barbell movements and stuff, they all place pressure on my kneecap. So I can't do any of them as well. While my knee is still feeling so unstable, I'm not allowed to do anything whatsoever which loads that kneecap. So I'm very much limited to what I can do on my legs. Now, the main reason I wanted to make this video is, of course, there are other people out there who have had like major injuries and stuff like that, and this is actually like my first like big injury. I've been quite fortunate that I've never really been injured before. So like the reason I wanted to make this video as such is, the last few days, I've gone through quite a lot of frustration, a little bit of anger, and obviously with the fact that it can't be told like how my meniscus is going to repair or how long it's going to take because of the nature of the injury. Like that creates a lot of uncertainty, and obviously that brings with it a lot of like anxiety, a lot of frustration and stuff like that. So I know a lot of people have been in this position or will probably go through this position when they have like a big injury or whatever like that. So I kind of wanted to make this video for that reason. Like, you will always have that frustration and anger, like, especially when your training's been going so well. Like mine has been going really well. This powerlifting phase has been fantastic for me. I've really enjoyed it. I've seen my numbers go up through the roof. It's been great. So to lose that momentum and have to take a step back because of what's happened to my knee is really fucking shit. Like, I hate it, and believe me, everyone will. Now, a lot of people will obviously let, their frustration, their anger, they'll let that consume them and stop them from doing anything. The amount of people I've come across who have got injured and then completely taken time away from the gym is ridiculous. Like, where I want to say first of all though, like, is, at the end of the day, rest and recovery is important. If you are genuinely told by a doctor or a GP or a physiotherapist that you genuinely can't exercise whatsoever, then, you listen to that and you take that advice. But I do find that there are a lot of injuries that people pick up in the gym or at home or outdoors, whatever, and they can still do things on top of it, but they're too busy, wallowing in their self-pity and, letting the frustration and anger get on top of them. And therefore they actually lose even more momentum, and they lose even more of what they've gained in their previous training, like blocks and stuff like that. They'll simply stay at home and just like cry to themselves and wallow in their self-pity, like I've already mentioned, hating life and all that shit. Like, and that's the biggest problem I see most people make, is they let the injury consume them to the point where it just affects their entire training path. And I don't know whether it's just me, but obviously I know there's a lot of people out there, as soon as I found out about my injury, the first thing I asked the physiotherapist, and I highly recommend that everyone does this when they get injured, when you find out about the nature of your injury, find out exactly what you can and can't do. Because what you'll find is, although an injury might affect a particular joint or a muscle group or whatever, you still might be able to, do certain type of movements for like muscle or like any kind of movement around where the injury is, that's still enabling you to actually like hit that target muscle group and get at least some form of volume in there. So to give you a bit of an example, obviously like the physio told me I'm not allowed to do any kind of loading on my kneecaps whatsoever. So obviously all the big compound lifts, especially in the lower body and some upper body movements, I'm not allowed to do them at all. But he did say that I am allowed to do things like leg extension and leg curl, because they are complete isolation movements which don't load the knee at all. And as soon as he told me that, the first thing I did was I went away and I started figuring out, how can I get as much of my training volume in as I would normally have? How much of that can I actually get into this like following next few weeks just by using leg extension and leg curl? So with that, I've been told I can do those two movements only. Now, don't get me wrong, that's hardly anything. It's shit that they're the only movements I can do, but it's better than nothing. And I'd much rather do something to, to like maintain the strength of my legs, maintain the size, and maintain the like the progress I've made over the last few months. I'd rather do something, even if it's a tiny bit, to keep on top of it, compared to like if I didn't do anything at all. So like my leg programs at the moment very much consist of doing GVT on leg extension and leg curl, just so I can get a lot of volume in on my legs, so that it's pretty much the exact same as what I would have done if I was following like the same program. So that'd be my first piece of advice really, is like, whatever your injury is, find out the full extent, or find out as much about it as you can as possible. Because as soon as you know what you can do on top of it, like if there are certain things that you can do that's not going to affect the injury and you can still keep on top of everything and still maintain strength, maintain muscle mass, whatever, do it. Like, stop wallowing in your self-pity and just get back in the gym and just start doing things. That's really all I've got to say on that one. So, it's not easy dealing with an injury. There's no doubt about it. I'm quite fortunate that my injury is quite minor, or it only will hopefully be quite minor. But, there are still things that you can do. So my first piece of advice would always be, find out the full extent of the injury, find out what you can and can't do, and then you just build your training program around it. And that's really what I want to say on the first point on that. The second point I want to make is, the good thing with an injury is, it identifies a lot of the mistakes that you have been making without you maybe even realizing it. So something the physio told me was, the reason that my knee and my meniscus came in contact and created that minor tear is because there's not a lot of space in and around that joint. Basically what happens is, with the fact that obviously like my quads and hamstrings are now like quite well built up, obviously as they get bigger, it's taking up more and more space inside the legs and stuff. But if I'm not keeping on top of my flexibility, that means that muscle is not moving. And what's basically happening is, because my muscles, like especially like my quads and hamstrings, because they're so tight, as the physio told me, like literally, he told me that my hamstrings and my quads are disgustingly tight. So yeah, he absolutely slated me for that. But anyway, so because my quads and hamstrings are so tight, it means that they're not moving around very well. And because of that, there's a lot of rigidity in my joints. So when I am actually putting some form of impact on that joint, which, you know, the joint is not made to handle, it means that an injury is just so much easier, or like so much more likely to happen. And basically that's what's happened there. He's told me that, you know, my flexibility in my quads and hamstrings are nowhere near good enough, and it's because of that lack of movement in those muscle groups which has caused this injury basically. So the good thing with an injury as such, although it's frustrating, it picks out, you know, the faults in your training or the faults in your lifestyle that you've not been looking after or you've not been paying much attention to. So I've now identified that my injury basically means that, you know, I've not been doing anywhere near as much like stretching, flexibility work, or even any form of mobility work, especially in my lower body. And I won't lie, the last few weeks I've got really lazy with it. Like, I've hardly done any mobility work whatsoever, especially since I accidentally left my foam roller in the gym and now I can't find it. But that's an excuse. And that's what's happened there, guys, basically. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's my fault. I slacked on my mobility and flexibility work, and that's what's led to my injury. But I wouldn't have known that unless I'd have got this injury. Now what's happened, since the physio told me about that, every day since I was diagnosed with the little tear in my meniscus, I've been doing more and more stretching and flexibility work. I've been doing at least an hour and a half of rehab every single night for it. And that's something I'm now going to make sure that I prioritize in my program. Because the last thing I want to do is get more repercussions and have injuries of this type or similar. Fuck that. Like, I absolutely love deadlifting and squatting, as many of you guys will know. You know, I love throwing myself under the bar and lifting heavy shit. So me taking time away from doing that right now is fucking painful. So I'm going to do everything I can now to make sure that I don't get anywhere near to having to do that all over again. So that would be my second point there, guys. You know, use it as an opportunity to find out what your weaknesses are and focus on them. Like, literally triple down on them, focus on them, and make sure that, you know, you fix those problems to stop you from getting these injuries again. And that's really all I have to say on that one, really. Like, it's annoying, don't get me wrong, but it highlights the mistakes that you've been making. And trust me, there are always areas that you can improve on within your fitness. You might be like a high-level CrossFit athlete who literally looks after every single component of fitness whatsoever. And, you know, you think of CrossFit athletes, you know, they do a lot of work with like strength training, they do a lot of endurance work, a lot of work on gymnastics and flexibility and stuff. They are pretty much the well-rounded athlete, but there are always things that they know that they can improve on. And that's the way you have to look at it as well. There is always something that you can improve on within your fitness journey. For a lot of people, especially myself, I'm not going to lie, I've slacked on my flexibility work and my mobility stuff. And I know there are a lot of people out there, especially gym rats, who don't pay attention to it enough. So, you know, there's no getting away from it. It's something that you are slacking with. And to be honest, or as harsh as it sounds, it's just an injury waiting to happen. And that's what's happened to me. You know, I've been training hard over the past few months. I've not been doing anywhere near as much work in like my recovery time and stuff. I've not been doing anywhere near enough for recovery at all. And ultimately, that's led to this injury. So that's my fault. I've accepted that, you know, and now I've realised I've got to do everything I can to turn that around and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So although these injuries are annoying, they do highlight the mistakes and it does allow you to work on them, especially if you didn't see them coming before. But the final thing I want to mention as well on this is, you know, with an injury, if you are forced to having taken some time off from a certain body part or whatever like that, it does mean that you can focus on other areas with your training as well. You know, not just the mobility side of things and stuff like that. It means you can dedicate more time towards other body parts. So obviously with my current powerlifting routine, there's not as much accessory work, especially for like the smaller muscle groups like biceps and triceps and stuff. So what I've done now is, you know, with the fact that there's a lot less training volume on my legs, I've decided to throw in obviously the leg extension and leg curl work that I'll obviously be doing to help keep on top of the volume for my legs. But then I've also thrown in a little bit of extra arm work because I feel like they could get a little bit more work, to be honest. And considering they are absolute twigs, hashtag twig arm, as I call myself on Instagram, I figured it might be time to just focus on them. So, but anyway, guys, that's going to bring an end to this video. So just to kind of recap, you know, when it comes to an injury, you've got to deal with it. It's frustrating. But the way you've got to look at it is, you know, you will come back and you will come back stronger and you'll come back with a lot more knowledge. Accept the mistakes that you've made in the run up to your injury. Learn from them and work on them in the time while you are recovering. And, you know, use that time to figure out as well what exactly the issue with your injury is. Make sure that you find out the full extent of your injury so that you know what training you can and can't do to at least maintain like what you've progressed with over the past few months. And, you know, still keep you happy in terms of, you know, being able to get into the gym and doing whatever you can. But that pretty much covers this video then, guys. So, you know, this is a complete one take, so I'll probably chat shit for a lot of this video. But anyway, I'm going to bring the video to an end here. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in another video soon. Have a good day.